To thank everybody. Well, thank you all for being here and taking the time to hear what we have going on. My name is Patty Dean, and I'm the owner of Comfortable Connections. And we'll be talking about our exciting options here. So this is me, and I'm a therapist, but I have that desire to fill gaps in services that I experienced as a mom because um, it was a rough experience, and I understand that all of you are moms as well. So you know a lot about what I'll be talking about. But I lived in Lewis County I raised my kids here for almost 20 years. I've also lived in Thurston County. Right now I'm living both places, and I'll be moving to Lewis County again in January. So I'll be talking about my experiences, and also I'll be talking a little bit about my educational background. I've got my master's degree in counseling and community psychology. I'm a licensed mental health counselor associate. I did work as an ABA provider, providing services to children on the spectrum in their homes and in the clinic. Um, I also provided grief counseling through hospice, and that will make more sense as to how that's connected to this soon. And currently, I'm a South Sound parent to parent mentor mom and have been for years. So I don't know if you all remember way back when people were going to have a baby, the question was, do you want a boy or girl? And now I know they're doing all these neat things to do gender reveal things and everything. But I remember that people would end the conversation by saying, well, as long as it's healthy. And, a boy or a girl, as long as it's healthy. And I used to think, even before I had any children, well, what if it wasn't healthy? What does that mean? What would you be not okay with that child because they weren't healthy? I mean, what do you do with that? So it sounded kind of offensive to me. And speaking about offensiveness, I hope that all of you can see that my heart is to be respectful of all individuals. Um, there's a lot of different talk right now about terminology and different ways that people want to be referred to when they have a disability. Some people now are really claiming the word autistic, saying that that is who they are, whereas it used to be person-centered language, where it was a person who was on the autism spectrum. And so I may say things that are one way or the other, and I just hope that the grace will be there for me, just knowing that I'm feeling nervous. I may not say all the right things correctly, but you know that my heart is in the right place, and I do respect all individuals. So I am a mom. I decided that it was a good idea to have 3 kids in 3 years, which was really a wild situation. And they are now ages 21, 19, and 18. And I raised them, homeschooled them for 10 years or so. And then we did public school as well, which I really thought was a great thing. We had really good experiences with the public school systems, and especially up in Olympia with the special need accommodations and modifications and everything. I was super impressed with it. So when I had my third child, Tom, my youngest, I noticed that something was different. Um, day 3 of his life, my milk came in and I was trying to nurse him and he started screaming, and it was not colic screaming. It was like completely different. I knew there was something wrong. So that started my journey. He ended up having a lot of medical issues that are not uncommon with people on the spectrum. There's a lot of gut-brain connection that we're finding. But for him, it started this long, long journey of trying to get help for him, and is a large reason why I'm here today talking with you. For some reason, the latest CDC statistics are from 2016. I have no idea why they don't have anything more recent than that. But at that time, they found that 1 in 54 children had autism spectrum disorder. And I don't believe that people are aware of that. I don't believe that people understand what autism spectrum disorder means, and the different spectrum of it. It can be extremely difficult and expensive, of course, and also it has a lot of blessings that people don't know that come with it too. But that is a really high number, and I believe that's a 10% increase from the previous time that they did the study, which was 1 in 66 children. It's a lot more boys than girls that have it. I think it's like 4 times more boys than girls have it. And we also don't really understand how to recognize autism spectrum disorder in females yet very well. So at some point, I think all of us parents have gotten to a point where, we don't understand what is going on. And so at some point we have to realize this is not the typical situation of colic or whatever. And I sent out an SOS, help me. It was like I was throwing a message in a bottle overboard, just hoping that I could get some help from somewhere, but not knowing where it was going to come from. So I began a search. Of course, I started with my pediatrician. Northwest Pediatrics was so helpful in this whole process. I ended up seeing all different kinds of specialists. We had all kinds of testing, very scary process to go through. I remember specifically having Tom tested for, we thought he had a hearing deficit, and it turned out that no, he did not. And I was so excited to hear that, but the person doing the testing was indicating to me that if what I was seeing was not an indication of a hearing deficit, that it was probably something inside the brain. And so that was the first indication that I had that this might not just be something that can be reversed or made into a typical situation. I remember going through tests, lots and lots of tests with him. I remember the test for cystic fibrosis is a sweat test where, it's just horrible. I remember they ended up drawing blood from his face, like his skull. The veins were popping out in his face from screaming so hard because of what they were doing to him, that they were trying to draw blood. And I just said, why don't you just take blood from that vein in his forehead that is popping out from him screaming, and let's just get this over with. And then waiting for, I don't know how long, it seemed like forever, to get the results back to see if he had cystic fibrosis and if he was going to die within a couple of years. So those of you who've been through this know this is extremely stressful. Trying to go and find a solution and being, presented with, well, maybe it's this horrific option, maybe it's that horrific option. It's terrifying. It's exhausting. And a lot of self-education. A lot of moms spend many, many sleepless nights on the internet trying to research, trying to find what is going on, trying to find solutions, trying to find somebody who understands or knows what they can do to help them. So it can feel like drowning. And when you're drowning, anything can look like a lifeboat. Even bad options can seem like the only chance that I had. Of course, family members had ideas about what to do. A lot of family members will address behavioral issues with strict discipline thoughts that may not work for people that are on the spectrum. It can be so hard. People are ripe for and very vulnerable for being taken advantage of at this time when we're searching for solutions. And some situations are that, maybe one solution works for another person and not for my child. But there are some people out there that want to take advantage of parents that are desperate, and they will offer solutions that they know do not work, and they're just trying to take advantage of the person. And so that's a very scary time. And when the realization is finally made that life, for whatever reason, it's going to take a different path, there's grief that happens there. And that grief is underlying the whole journey. Starting to think of things like, what's going to happen to my child when I die? Who's going to take care of them? Are they ever going to be able to live on their own? I had no idea. My son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when he was 5, but I knew way before that he had that because I educated myself, despite the fact that a developmental psychologist told me that he did not have it, and that he was typical, which I knew was not true. There was about 3 years where we thought he had something called Kabuki syndrome, which would have and a lot of other medical things. Just the possible things that could have been going on with him were so numerous and terrifying. But what I knew was that everything was not going to be okay. Everything was not going to be the way that typically happens. This was not a situation where this child would eventually, my fear was that he would never eventually be able to be an independent adult. And that was terrifying. So at this point, the whole family needs help. I know that parent to parent is very helpful. I know my first mentor mom with parent to parent, looking back, I can see that she was so desperate to have somebody hear her that she was not able to hear me at all. And parent to parent is fantastic, but people need additional services in addition to parent mentor moms. It's just not the same. They're not trained to provide counseling. They're not saying they're providing counseling. It's not, I don't have an issue with that. But this is something that all the family members need help. And I'm so grateful that parent to parent had SIP shops, because the other 2 children that were being dragged around to things like the Birth to 3 program, which we went to growing together rather than InTaught, because we were, what part of the county we were in, but that was like a Birth to 3 program. So all my 3 kids, we were all growing together. And then, Tom got to go to the developmental preschool Tiger Cubs over at Centralia High School. These were wonderful things, but my other kids were being dragged here and there and everywhere. And that it had an impact on them too. And SIB shops was a place that they could go and be with other people who got it. And I think that that's one of the big takeaways from this conversation that I'm having with all of you, is that empathy is really a requirement for mental health in this situation. Not sympathy, not, oh, I'm feeling sorry that you're in this situation, I'm sorry. I get it. I'm with you. I know I don't have the fix, but I'm here for you. And that's one of the things that I know that we can bring to the table and offer people, and it helps. So as I was looking at different opportunities, I saw that there were things out in the community. I was, had hope, and I was getting excited about that because once I figured out who the players were and what they could offer, I started looking into those things. So at this point, we as parents start chasing rainbows, I call it. I know that for me, and I really think that things are different now, but at the time that I was doing this, DDA came in and said, yes, we are here. Yes, we are going to help you. Yes, here are funds and hours to spend to have caregivers come in and give you some respite. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And DDA said, here's a pot a pot of money that you can utilize for your child, that you can use on horseback riding lessons, you can use on, therapy swings, you can use it on all these things that you need. And I was so happy. But what I found, and again, I hope this is different, is that caregivers are so full. Caregivers are not really available. And my son could not be left alone until he was, I don't know, I think it was 16. So he could literally not be left alone in the house without somebody there, not because he couldn't walk or couldn't use the bathroom, but because in the case of a fire, his plan was to go and make sure that he could get all of his Legos out. He didn't even understand about getting out of a burning building. He could not be left alone. He was not safe. So that's exhausting. And to have no respite and to have all of this money and these hours that I'm allowed to use on respite, but be unable to find somebody to provide it was so frustrating. And then the allocation, the money, I don't know, it was like $3,600 a year that I had, that I was so excited I now had money that I could spend on Tom's needs. I think now I'm a very stubborn and persistent person, and I'm a researcher, and I could not jump through the hoops. I could not figure it out. I could not get any of that money. I think I finally was able to access $50 worth of that money to purchase an automatic medication dispenser so that he could become more independent with his medications. But that was out of thousands of dollars that I had held right in front of me that I could not reach. So other things were difficult to get signed up for. Getting signed up for DDA is very difficult. Getting signed up for Medicaid, SSI, all of those things, it's so hard to get signed up for. So at first, when I was told all these things were available, it seemed like, yes, things are going to be okay. This is going to be managed. I have help. But the reality was, the situation was, at times, it was impossible to even get him out of the house. Meltdowns, illnesses, just all of these things that get in the way, even when things are set up, it's so hard to get the needs met. So families really need a way to get relief. They need a way to process their grief. There's really not much out there that people are aware of or that have the energy to access. I want to talk a little bit about ABA. In my opinion, ABA is amazing. It is great. It is life-changing. I think that some people have beliefs about it that are based on very old information. However, when Tom was of age and people were talking about ABA, Lewis County did not have, there was no way to access it in Lewis County. It was just starting to come to the West Coast, and it was difficult. I ended up on a waiting list, as pretty much everybody else was, on a waiting list for Thurston County ABA, even though I lived in Lewis County. So because I couldn't get him into it, I actually went and got training myself, became an ABA provider, started working in the field through Basics Northwest, providing services to people in their homes and the clinic, and going home and using ABA skills and doing ABA with my son, myself. Eventually, our name came up on the wait list for Thurston County, and we spent 5 days a week driving up there for, I think it was 3 or 4 hour sessions. So basically, once you get into ABA, it's a mad dash. It's extremely intense time-wise. It's like ours was like 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, I think. And it's focused on extinguishing problem behaviors, connecting, fitting in so that you can actually be part of society and enjoy things like friendships. It's a mad dash to get as much in as possible, because there comes a time when it's done. Usually when children turn around 13, they stop. There's a developmental stage where they are no longer focused on what is happening at the time, but they can also imagine what is going to happen in the future. And at that point, they may say, I don't want to be working on ABA anymore. And once a kid is a teen, I could no longer just pick up my kid and take him where I needed him to go like I could when he was 2. It's different. We want them to have more decision-making ability. And ABA just doesn't work forever, long-term for everybody. And so that's another need that is there, because at that point, my vision was, okay, my expectation was we're going to be transitioning to adulthood, going to utilize the school systems. This is going to be great. Got skills now. But what actually happened was, it was like there was this drop off of services. The schools, are getting much better at providing training for jobs and things like that, which is wonderful. But my child had a lot of needs that were not being addressed. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. Is everybody still seeing what I'm having here? Okay. For my son, I sought out counseling for him throughout his life, and met with varying results. There's not much out there in the way of counseling people who are on the autism spectrum. A lot of the focus is on behaviors, not emotions. Goals, not empathy, and the goals usually are of the person that is. Okay. Okay, thank you. The goals are not of the actual person on the spectrum. So at this point where ABA is over and the person is, on the precipice of adulthood or whatever, they've hit their teen years, it's time to take stock of the situation. And at this point, In my family, everything was a mess because ABA had been the focus all the time, and the energy and the finances that were dumped into it. Um, Divorce is extremely common when there is a child with any kind of disability in a home. The stress is handled differently by different people, and a lot of times the stress is just too high to keep a healthy family system going. So it's time to really look and see what is going on. So at this point, there's a problem. And Trish is going to talk about the solution in just a second. But I just want to say that there's a problem there that currently, when you have children on the autism spectrum, there's a lot for them. But once they get to a certain age, it's like things stop. So this is what Trish and I are looking at. Trish, I don't know if you can take over, because I'd like her to share on this slide. I don't know how to do this.
Oh, you're good. Just leave it right there.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
perfect.
Yeah.
I can.
Okay. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our solution. So, Patty and I have been talking about this as we're kind of working with Tom, her son, and his aging process, and seeing his developmental development and how that's kind of developing, and what kind of supports are out in the community. Like she said, these agencies are great agencies because they've all offer aspects of the needs as the child develops and goes along, and so there's been good things when they've come into play in a lot of ways. But then we noticed, like in the teen years, where there was kind of this drop off, and what we noticed is, there was this point where he was like, all of his friends were growing up and they're becoming adults, and he's wondering, how about me, and how am I going to adult when I can't count money, when I can't, and these were concerns he started bringing forward, when I can't, get drive or provide transportation, or when I'm having, and it was really weighing heavy a lot on him. And so we really started looking for counselors that would be able to help, or be able to work with social skills, or be able to do things. And there just wasn't, we found very limited out there. And what we did find, correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, but what we did find is oftentimes it was very limiting. I think we found one really good counselor out of Thurston County area, but we've multiple areas of trying different things. And this is really what led us to where we are today. And so we created, Patty has her company, Comfortable Connections. I have mine, Avoiding the Couch. And part of the reasons why we have two different companies, but we are working in coordination around our clientele, is because we both kind of focus on different aspects of things. We are focusing on individuals on the autism spectrum. Patty's got her amazing expertise, and I've got my amazing expertise. And a lot of what I feel is like, is being able to provide mental health services to children and to family. And when I say children, we're talking about the teen years is really what we're focusing on. When there's not seeming to be the services available, maybe they outgrew some things, or they're just not things that are out there yet that have come along. And so I can talk, I think, more the next slide, Patty.
Okay, I wanted to kind of talk about these,
Okay.
if that's okay, Trish. So the focus that we really are looking at is, it is so hard to find therapists that are comfortable working with people on the spectrum. I saw a study, and they're like, some people that are willing to work with people on the spectrum, some that are uncomfortable with it, and some people that flat out will not do it. And I think that maybe some people that think they can do it shouldn't be doing it, because I've had experiences where Tom has had some counselors that would literally just let him talk. Now, this is not the kind of talk that you would see in normal counseling where people are processing things, This is just, he was talking about Disney movies. That's his special interest. And a lot of the counselors, most of the counselors did not know what to do with that. So I would discover that they actually were holding the whole session and Tom was just telling them about Disney movies. So I tried to train them on how to work with him and how to utilize his special interests to talk about other things and connect things. I remember this wasn't therapy, but I remember at one point getting Tom skiing lessons, and it was through a special needs ski thing. And the way that they got his attention was they said, okay, Tom, we are on the snow-covered Star Wars planet Hoth. And we're going to be like moving around on this planet. And so it's like a snowy planet. I'm not a Star Wars person. But anyway, he got it and he bought into it. And he had this laser focus on all things skiing because they were on the planet Hoth. And that's something that it's, if people speak the language of the individual on the spectrum, and if they can tune into that special interest instead of trying to distract from it and let's get back to work, they can get on that interest and fly with the person on the spectrum and go with them and work with that to address issues that the person is having. And the person on the spectrum really, it needs at this point to be the client's goal, not the counselor's goal. It needs to be what is getting in the way of that individual meeting the goals that they want in their life. Maybe they want to talk about, how do I talk to a girl or a guy? How do I, get somewhere? Like Trish was talking about transportation. A lot of this is also showing empathy and non-judgmental positive regard for an individual who's on the spectrum and all that they have gone through just being on the spectrum and all they've gone through with their ABA experiences and all the things that they weren't being able to be a part of, the sacrifices that they had to make, the fact that they've been on this journey their whole life of drama and striving and how much work they've had to do to get where they are today. That stuff isn't being addressed. If anybody else had gone through traumatic circumstances, people would say, of course they need counseling to process all of that. But I'm not trying to say that my son and everybody's child was traumatized by being on the spectrum. But what I'm trying to say is that they went through something. It is an experience that other people really can't understand. And empathy and understanding and really validating that experience is extremely important to do. The other focus had always been on skill building, problem solving, all of that for those children in ABA or the children in behavior therapy or the children that were getting, medicated and all of the different things that they had to do to get behaviors under control. Now it's flipped to how do we live with this? On the other side of the screen, the caregivers of individuals with special needs. This doesn't have to do with autism spectrum. I'm just talking about the other part of our company is that we want to be there and help with the people that have been going through these very, very difficult journeys, regardless of what special needs they have been dealing with in their life, in their children's lives. Learning things like self-care for themselves, trying to connect them with community resources so that they can start to be able to meet their needs, because their needs have been put aside. Because as moms, We are meeting the needs of our families, but the moms or the dads or the whoever the parent may be or the caregiver, at this point they are exhausted. And the sooner we can get a hold of these people, better. It would be wonderful to start them from the beginning of this whole process. I wish to God that I'd had somebody there for me. Did you want to add something, Trish?
No.
So when that pivot happens and we start focusing on empowerment for the individual on the spectrum to set their own goals, everything changes. And that's not ABA anymore. And so that is why our focus is working on teenagers on the autism spectrum. The teenagers are the ones that don't have those things available to them. These services aren't really, I believe that the reason why these types of services are not out there is because I believe that there is a misunderstanding about people on the spectrum and their needs. I remember a neurologist told me when Tom was young, when he had just been diagnosed, that the biggest problem I would have with him when he got older would be that he would not understand why he would have to have friends, that he wouldn't understand the concept of wanting to connect with people. That neurologist was so wrong, because what people on the spectrum want is they want to connect. Eye contact may be difficult, but they want to connect. So at the same time, we really want to be offering the supportive counseling to the caregiver. And that from the beginning, I think that'd be great from the beginning. And when you have multiple needs in the family and multiple needs in life, it can be extremely stressful to try to manage all of that. Tag, you're it, Trish. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm going to make this short. I know we're running a little bit low on time. I want time to have questions and just some stuff at the end. So I'm going to make this pretty quick here on this slide. But I just want to talk about, Patty talked about a variety of things that we're looking at. And so one of the things I want to tell you exactly what what we're talking about through counseling is we want to provide mental health services. If you notice on the interventions list that Patty earlier slide, she didn't really mention mental health services for individuals who are on the spectrum. And the truth is these people are dealing with, especially in their teen years, dealing with the idea of adulting, dealing with the idea of dating, dealing with the idea of friendships, dealing with the idea of watching siblings go on. And no matter what, if you know anything about the brain is made and created for connection. It's an automatic function of the brain. There's been studies done on it. So if our brain is functioning in any form or level, we desire connection. That's why isolation during COVID has been so impactful, is because your brain is made for authentic, true face-to-face connection, not over the computer, not in other capacities. So one of the things that we do is that I work on with kids, and I've got a couple kids I'm working on right now on the spectrum, is dialectical behavior therapy. Dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, really has to do with working on mindfulness, which helps with focus and patience. It helps with, we also have distress tolerance, which works with suicidal ideation, which I've run into a couple kids on this that get very depressed. Because they just cannot. So we talk about how to deal with the stress, how to deal with stuff, and how to keep yourself safe. We talk about interpersonal relationships, which is what are your values? What's important to you? And then also, how do you say yes to people? How do you say no? And how do you be interested and validate other people? And so these are all tie into kind of a social skills group, but it also really ties into mental health, because these are all things that are important. We all need lifeboats in our life. We all need support, healthy support systems. And that's what our friends are, our families are. We also talk about emotional regulation with DBT, which really is about where do we feel, and so we kind of do all that. The other thing we work on is we had a great DD, and we were like, oh my God, this is great, where they really just asked about, what are your goals? What does look like to you? What's your future look like? And I know the school focuses a lot on that, as well as with the DBT, because we're talking about not only are these your goals, but then you have to also work on this stuff and how do we get there? And so the kids don't understand that, the teens, when we're working with them, but I do. And so that's what we work with is that. And also the other thing is brief therapy. Sometimes kids don't want to be in counseling. So we come in, we do what we can to get them further along, and then we back away. We let them go out and enjoy the world. And then when they come back in, they come back in. And so this is something where we really believe in just being able to support the individual for where they're at. So I'm going to leave it at that. The other thing is DBT is very, I learned this in juvenile corrections, and the language is so simple. You actually teach the skills, and it's very simplistic language and things that teens can relate to, and kids can relate to. So it's a great, easy breakdown. It's a break off of cognitive behavior therapy. And so, but it's more simplistic. And that's one of the things that I love about it, is that it's so simplistic. And so it's a great thing to be offering, but we don't see that right now really out there a whole lot. I do have a DBT group. I know that the Department of Health, recently I sent it to JP. I think he was going to put it on the website for a group that's being offered. So anyways, if you want more information on that, you can go in there and look at that. I'm going to move on and let Patty, because we're on time here. So go ahead, Patty.
Okay, and I will wrap it up. I'll just take like 2 minutes to wrap it up. So basically, we want to provide brief, focused counseling to the caregivers and teens on the spectrum. When I say brief, Trish's company is called Avoiding the Couch. And the couch used to be long-term counseling. And we don't want to do that. We are thinking more that this would be a short, brief therapy, maybe with people coming in and getting checkups, tune-ups here and there, but this is not something that should be ongoing, long-term, expensive for most people. I mean, if people wanted to do that, they could, but it shouldn't have to be. But we want people to be able to make comfortable connections. And in my opinion, the only way, especially that people who are not comfortable being in person can seek therapy right now, one of the ways is through telehealth. And if you have a person who is on the spectrum, a lot of times they may not be comfortable with telehealth because that's a lot of eye contact. That's a lot of intense interpersonal things. But if you do something simple, like allow them to wear a hat with the bill pulled down over their eyes, so you can see that they're there, you can know that they're hearing you, but they don't have to be staring at you. That is something that helps to make a comfortable connection. And that is the goal, to make this comfortable for everybody. And so they can choose if they want in person or Zoom, and what their goals are, and just the format that they prefer, putting them in the driver's seat, the caregivers and the teens. So currently, we have availability in Washington State through telehealth, and there are some in-person services available, specifically through Avoiding the Couch in Lewis County right now. And so I just want to thank everybody for their time, and I would love to answer any questions or give you an opportunity to ask them of Trish or myself.